in some ways, I feel like a lot of the technologies that we need or are going to need are already in some fashion available to us today. Maybe a little more embryonic in others than other places than so on. But I think what will happen is not necessarily lots and lots of new technologies, but an acceleration of the adoption and the sort of the growth in the enhancements of capabilities of those technologies. So, as an example, where you look at companies that provide sort of simulation software for providing what feels like a conference room experience, whiteboarding and collaboration software and things like that. Software that's been around for a while, but unless you have mass work remote, may have been used marginally for some remote distributed teams, unless you were already in it working as a remote organization. Just as a side note, I read a book this past weekend that was titled "Remote, No Office Required," written by a gentleman by the name of Jason Fried. I think it's spelt Fried, but I think it's spelled pronounced Fried. And it was written in 2015, interestingly enough, and shared a lot of experiences about the value and the benefits of working remote and some of the challenges and how to overcome those challenges. And it was almost like a prediction for what was going to happen in 2020. But what you see is you see that people are now adopting maybe tools and capabilities that they already had, but they're adopting them at a more sophisticated level and at an accelerated pace. I think it's like sort of like Zoom didn't get invented during COVID. It was around pre-COVID, and now of course we're seeing just a massive adoption there. We're seeing a lot of that. I think to your point though, I think that we mentioned earlier around culture as well. I think we also have to make sure we focus on, our business models are being disrupted, our operations are being disrupted, technology architecture is being disrupted, and the culture of a lot of companies is being disrupted. If you mentioned the last 10 years, if you go back, I think it's statistics show or data shows that over 50%, I think it's like 55+% of the Fortune 500 have disappeared since the year 2000, which if you do the math is more than one per month. When you look at why, it was not because of technology. Technology was the enabler to the disruption. It was the enabler to the outcome. And that is now potentially being sped up even more with COVID. So, COVID being the new champion of accelerating change or digital agenda for most companies. So I think you're going to see a rise in software platforms that enable teams to collaborate better, simulate office experiences, whiteboarding, scrum meetings, software development, automated QA. I've been talking to some companies recently that are automating, sort of security validations, compliance validation, automation of QA, bringing together in single dashboards for telemetry for what's going on across your organization, measuring productivity, things that are built for global teams to design, collaborate, and build more effectively. I think you're going to see a lot of things there. And of course, we're going to see a continued rise in leveraging machine learning and AI. I like to say that if any activity, anything that takes a human being less than a second to think about can be automated. Doesn't mean to say it has been, but it can be. And I think you think about the digital transients of today versus the digital natives of today. And they're entering the workforce with an entirely different set of expectations, a different way of working, a different way of thinking, much more apt to change, and are not going to necessarily accept ways of working that were pre-COVID, these things that are maybe standard, repeatable, mundane types of work. And so we have to introduce digital labor, we have to introduce AI, we have to introduce machine learning. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for us to even attract the new generation of workforce that's coming.